session is more about, the topic exactly is about the businesses powered by open source. We'll get to the topic later. I know that Abhas has a slight disagreement on the topic which was chosen. He says there's a difference between a business powered by open source and an open source business. So think about it. But the starting round, I would request each one, maybe in 2 minutes, we'll have more time for them to talk about their work as we go along. But in 2 minutes each to tell us about the work they do, how the open source free software, whatever model fits in, please. Starting this side, because Tarun has just spoken, he spent a long time speaking. So,
good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhas. I lead a free software business called DeepRoot Linux, and I'm not proud of the fact that it's called DeepRoot Linux. I would love to call it DeepRoot Free Software Services or DeepRoot GNU Linux. But, well, I set it up more than 18 years back, and I only knew Linux at that time and not GNU. So the point I'm trying to make is that I call it a free software business because the singular foundation on which our business is built is, we are in the business of providing freedom to customers. We build IT infrastructure for them. We build mail servers. We build clusters. We offer services and support for a variety of free software tools. And that's what people pay us for. So sometimes we also build software, but a lot of work that we do is around existing free software tools which exist and are available to people. I also run a new business called Mostly Harmless, where I experiment with building hardware solutions which are built as free hardware, basically hardware which is also shared with freedom and powered by free software. So,
and just to add about the Abbas's introduction, you must see all his websites that he has. They are all under his signature file. Write to him, he'll send them back to you. They are the most interesting set of websites I've seen. But we move down to Rushabh Mehta, who's director and CEO of Frap Technologies and ERPNext.
Yeah, hi, so I'm Rushabh. I started I started writing a ERP application for my family business in around 2005-06. And over time, my family sold the business and I continued doing ERP as a product. So I built it on Python, and we also not only built the ERP application, we also built a web framework, because in 2005 there was no Django, there was no Rails. So we also wrote our own web framework, and so it's been a long journey for me. And since I built it on Python, open source was kind of the default option for me. I believe that software is better written when it's written in the open. I'm not very ideological about free software and open source software. Over the years, it's been on Google Code since 2008, actually, and I recently read there are 90 million repositories on GitHub. So just publishing something as open source or free software does not guarantee anything. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we have been building a significant community. We have our user forum now has more than 8,000 members. We think there are more than 5,000 active installs of ERPNext. Globally, there are 2 popular open source ERP products, active and popular, and one of them is ERPNext. So in a way, yeah, and we also do our own conferences. We have our ERPNext conference coming up in 2 weeks. So that will be our 5th conference. We have had events in Germany and in Indonesia around ERPNext. And it's a growing product. We have worked on it as a small team, and I think we are at a point where it's beginning to really grow as a open source product and a community.
And yeah, Tarun Dua, you've just heard him speak, those of you who were in the full hall. He's the co-founder of E2E Networks. And Tarun, more than introducing your firm, which we've heard a bit about, can you tell us what are the challenges that open source free software based business in India would face, since you have so much experience, you've been at it for such a long time?
So of course, there is an anecdote. So I met one of a fellow entrepreneur in Delhi. So he had built a open source product, and he was trying to sell to a large corporate. This story is like apocryphal, like you can fill in the blanks, like the characters would change, but the story has been told and has been repeating itself like year after year in India. So he went to a large conglomerate, like, okay, here I have a product to sell, and the answer from conglomerate was like, okay, like this is open source, we can take the code and customize it for our usage in like less than the cost of what you are trying to charge us. So my friend's answer was like, yeah, this is like certainly something you can do. So kind of like they parted ways, and after 2 years, that company called him and said that like, yeah, we would like to buy your product. So now it's an open source product. We are in India where supposedly the cost of manpower is cheap, but still this company thinks that they can do something because this is open source on their own, and the ownership of the open source doesn't really matter, or the contribution size does not matter, but that's not true. So open source software is like any other software. The team which has built the software, the team which has contributed to the software, the people who have written the software or people who have understood the software from inside out are the ones you will almost always end up paying, unless it's a very popular software that has built such a following that there is a huge support ecosystem that you can find globally around those pieces of software. Especially in the context of selling to any kind of enterprise that needs an assurance for the software. So that being said, like the cost of writing code obfuscates to a very large extent the difference between ability to commercialize open source versus fully proprietary software as of today. The only advantage of having software available for free, both as in beer as in freedom, is that you develop a much larger ecosystem of software users, and you also develop a much larger ecosystem of contributors. Then you also develop an ecosystem of people who are writing documentation around your software because it is open source. So kind of like what used to happen 10 years back in India, when the economy was very small, people had less number of opportunities, manpower was really cheap, people were not really valued, time was not really valued. As we have moved from a time rich and money poor country to a time poor and money rich country, which is already happening in places like Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, etc., is that open source software licensing is almost as valuable or even more valuable than proprietary software, depending on the product market fit of the software. So today, for a small company, a new entrepreneur who is building something new, open source makes a lot more sense than building a proprietary stack, because you even out the playing field by simply pointing out the fact that like, okay, look, even if I were to die as a company, the software would live on. So you've got nothing to worry about. So, so what I would like to really say over here to this question is that commercializing open source today in India is much, much easier than it was 10 years back.
We know that there are differences between open source and free software, and the emphasis of one is on openness and choice and efficiency, and on the other it's on freedom. But leaving that apart for now, for the moment, supposing there are some young people here, some young students who want to understand this question. Now I would like to ask both Abhas and Rushabh, what are the business models that are actually available for someone wanting to start, and what has worked for you all, maybe?
Okay, so the question of business models, I don't think it's an important enough question, because there are so many ways of building a business. Business is a transaction between two parties. One party pays the other to offer them some value. If you can offer some value to someone which they're ready to pay you for, you can enter into a business relationship with them, right? So it's up to you to figure out what value people want and how are you going to offer it to them and charge them for it, right? So there is no dearth of value that you can offer people. So when the software itself is available free of charge and under a free software license, restraining access to that software is not the value, right? So then you have to find other ways of building value.
And in DeepRoot's case, what is it?
The value that we provide is we can get things to work faster for people, we can get it to work better. But, I mean, so if people identify that they want to implement something using free software, and they can't figure out how to do it themselves, then they try to use us as a catalyst to do that, right? But, you know, so you were asking what are the challenges. So I face a big challenge today. People, I think the problem is that people want to use free software to build solutions in their own networks, without really using the freedom they are getting. What I mean is that, look, let's say we are working with a defense organization. There's nothing that stops them from building competency in any of the solution that we are building for them. We are actually very small. We are like 6 people and they are 6,000, 7,000 people, right? There's nothing that stops them from hiring a competent team to do a lot of things on their own. However, they would still like us to do things for them. Right? So they're not using the opportunity that free software provides them to learn, to build competency, to build skill, to use that skill for so many other things within their organization, so that the entire freedom aspect, the opportunity aspect is lost.
Yeah, this is the point we used to raise many years back, that it's free software, open source is not just about cheapness, it's about opportunity, it's about ability to learn, to go under the stack.
Right. So I feel sad that when I try to make customers aware that, look, why we can help you do this, we will train you, we will give you 100% of whatever we know to help you do exactly what we can do for you. Basically, I'm trying to eliminate myself from that relation. You know, they don't want to take that offer at times. And then I realized that they've not understood that the essence is that it can empower them. It's not just a way of doing something better technologically, or doing something faster, or doing something in a more secure manner, or at a lower cost. These are very low-hanging fruits that you can gain out of using free software.
These are collateral advantages.
Yes, but if they really wanted to build a stronger ethos in their organization of how technology can help them, then free software is one of the best ways of doing that. And that also only if they sort of try to understand how it works. And then again, I don't look at it from the perspective of the community or the shared stake that the entire community has in the software. I'm talking about 2 people in a business relationship, right? So I'm providing a value, and I'm also providing the opportunity where they can have the same value for themselves. So they don't need to pay us, actually. Why do they have to pay us? They're paying us because they feel we can do something for them that they don't want to do themselves, or they can't do themselves. Why can't they do it themselves?
Rushabh, free software means only services? No. Tell us why.
So I've given this a lot of thought in the last few months as we've also set up the ERPNext Foundation, which is Section 8 not-for-profit.
Just go a bit slow. The ERPNext
ERPNext Foundation.
Foundation is what?
Is a Section 8 not-for-profit, which is driving the ERPNext product. So this is something we set up just a year ago. Our commercial entity has existed for 10 years now. So I've been able to, I think I've got a handle around, the whole model of, open source. So there are 2 things here. One is you're a consumer of open source. Then you add no value to the product. Like all of us use Python, I use Python for my product, but I may do an occasional donation, right? And Python probably doesn't need my expertise at this point because I'm not expert into the language part of Python. I'm just a user. So the user community is just on the top of a product. They don't add any value to the product. And then the user community has its own service model where one set of users pay another set of users to pay for it, or hosting, or whatever. There is so many people do ERPNext hosting. They don't add any value to ERPNext. So now then there is the core product, which is actually built by the sweat and blood of a lot of people, right? And they need salaries to get paid. So for this, I realized there are 3 models here. So one model is the cross-subsidy model, where you have a large enterprise who open sources or makes a part of their application as free. You look at a lot of the web stack, you look at Chrome, for example, the Chromium project, which is sponsored by Google, and any project that's sponsored by Google, Microsoft, are the cross-subsidy products where they have some objective of creating a distribution model or something, and that funds the developers who work on those products. And even Linux, to a very large extent, is funded by a lot of large corporations. The other model is the foundation model. It's a pure charitable model where the salaries of all the developers are funded either as a charity, through a foundation, like you have again Linux Foundation, you have Mozilla, you have Python Software Foundation. So the foundation actually pays for the salaries of the contributors, and then a lot of people donate. So when you have a project that hits a certain level of popularity, then you will have a certain percentage of people donating back into the product. And that will fund the contribution side of it. The other side, which is very popular in business open source, is the open core model, which is where part of the product is free, but a lot of it is not free. And it's kind of a freemium because companies then give part of the free product, and then it gets deceptive to a point because you expect to enter into a open source or a free product, but then you realize you can't. For example, WordPress and WooCommerce is a very common example. You can't set up a WooCommerce a site without having at least 10 plugins. Right? You need a plugin for a payment gateway. You need a plugin for a theme. You need plugins for loyalty points. So that's the open core model. So these are the three models. My conclusion is that the foundation model is the cleanest model in terms of having the incentives correctly stacked. Because when you look at products and the semantics, when you look at Wikipedia, which is backed by Wikimedia Foundation, it's a charitable cause the society takes up, that we do some charity to Wikimedia Foundation to create this asset which is available to all of us. So I would say that when you talk about business, it's actually about sustainability. That goes much beyond just business. Those are.
Maybe Abhas has a different.
Yeah, so I can reckon with what Rushabh is saying. Okay, providing service is still easy. Building a product takes a lot of time and commitment. And you're going to have months and years of work going into something that's not going to generate immediate revenue for you, right? So how do you create compelling long-term value without sort of being able to sell that value for that amount of time that you're going to spend developing it, right? So we have also been grappling with it because there are times when we feel, we know how to develop this, but we don't have the opportunity to develop it, right? Because to develop it, I would need peace of mind for, say, 3 months. And that means if I'm going to focus on doing just development for 3 months, then I'm not going to do business development for 3 months, which means that something else can suffer, right? So it's a conflict between business development and product development. And that's where it's very important to figure out how are you going to pay yourself, for that effort that you want to put in. So it's okay. Sorry, Rushabh, just one small point.
Please.
So the point is, I know how to leverage the value of the product once I have built it, right? That's not the problem. The problem is funding the development of the product. Now, our current business model doesn't give us the cash flow we need to invest into building it, right? Which means that it's a chicken and egg thing. Once I build it, I know it's going to offer immense value to customers and they will pay for it. But till I build it, I cannot offer that value, right? So anyway, I'm saying there are ways of raising funds which don't involve going to people who have those funds. We have to figure out what those ways are. But the business model concept again comes into picture because people. So why is open core a model for people? Because they still want to hold the keys to some part of their source code, which provides immense value that they think people will pay for, right? And the way I look at it, I would never want to build anything proprietary because it's too much work to build proprietary software actually. If you just shared everything and you did it with a good intention, I'm sure it would give you returns, even monetary returns so many times over. That's not the problem. That's not the problem we need to figure out. People are trying to use these models to fund development. So funding the development is the issue here, not the sales model, not the business model.
To all the young people who are wondering where all this theory is taking us, I would like to say that just go in for it. Sometimes the theory is more frightening than the actual real thing. So I had got a chance to get involved with some study in Finland where they were looking at how this open source world is affecting every other sphere of life. And this was in 2003, way back, and they found all kinds of bizarre things happening like open source law, where you build your arguments collaboratively. So while you lose the advantage of stealth, because if you do it behind closed doors, you can throw it at your opponent in the court. Here you actually got the brain power of so many more lawyers who are contributing their arguments. Or there's open source biology. I applied it to publishing books back in Goa and it actually worked, so it worked well. So of course you may not get all the perks and benefits that a big corporation has, but there's another kind of reward that is hugely satisfactory in that sense. I don't know if I'm making sense. If you want to come in, sorry, Tarun.
No, I think let's.
Tarun, if you want to come in on some of the other issues we were discussing as far as your business experiences go.
Sure. So, like my experience and our experience overall has been that like people pay for solutions. So, for example, like take the example of the popular open source database servers. Now, they of course like you can pay for the licenses and you can get the assurance in terms of kind of like these are the bugs that I would like to see fixed, and if you are the one who is paying for licenses, then those bugs would get prioritized. And there is of course there is a support part of the licensing, so that one is there. But then the more important part is like around open source businesses that who may or may not need to support the code. So, one part is of course that the code needs to be supported. So, how are we paying for the code? So, for example, like are you buying services from entity which produced the code, or are you buying support from entity which did not produce the code? So, how does it help the entity which originally open sourced the code to kind of like pay for the code if there are other people who come in and say that okay, I am going to provide all the services around that. So, that is the conundrum where you said that like foundation model works, but sorry, I will just complete the point. So, so my belief is that like the entity who has done most contribution to the open source, there would always be buyers for that entity who are either going to purchase services, they are either going to purchase certifications, who are going to buy priority bug fixes, who are going to buy kind of like services around standardization of the infra around that particular source code. So, if you are producing value via your open source code, you are fulfilling a need in the market, it will sell regardless of the fact that it is available for free. People will still want to pay for that.
Yeah.
So, just connecting the two points is that I think there is no entitlement. If you put something out, there is no entitlement that somebody should come to you for the services, right? So, as a publisher, no, as a publisher, so there are two things. Like from my personal experience, is that we've seen a lot of companies build products from ERPNext. They have built, and then at some point, I used to feel this that they got to 0 to 90 for free, and the top 10 they built, it's their duty to contribute back. But actually that's wrong thinking, because when you push something out, that's it. You don't expect anything back, right? I mean, that's what I've learned, because ultimately the contributions only come from a very small fraction of people, and they have other reasons to do it. And I also find this whole discussion very interesting, that we are always looking at a commercial model of funding open source. There is a non-profit model, which is how, if you look back at the GNU project, or you look back why Linus as a college student was able to build Linux, or you look at how Mozilla was actually, the whole source code was donated by an entity. So a lot of open source actually happens, or the Wikipedia Foundation, where there is a lot of volunteer effort that goes into building Wikipedia. So commercial is not the only model. We need to think beyond commercial, because I think a lot of these discussions get stuck into the commercial mode. That we need to, I mean society as a whole also needs to take responsibility that all these assets that we create need to sustain. So that is, that is the broad thing, and it's up to the publisher, how much they want to drive it, right? If you look at Linus, he's very clear he does not want to get the money. He's happy to let Red Hat or GitHub. I read the press release, and the first line said, "Thank you, Linus, for creating Git." When they got acquired for $7.5 billion, and I'm sure he didn't get any piece of that cake, or I don't know if he had equity in GitHub or they had donated. I have no idea. But there's no entitlement. Just because he created Git, there is no entitlement that he should get some equity in GitHub, right?
No,
so we have to be very categorical that when you do open source, you do it because it's the right thing.
Rishabh, your point is valid. You are not wrong, but Dua also is right. When he says that people sometimes they feel that this is a good guy, he's doing something good, let's help him back. So that often happens, I'm saying when you're sharing work, it happens even in journalism for us. The other point I want to make was that earlier in the afternoon there was a session of we are good at fulfilling the needs of the rest of the world, but not our own country. Okay, and I think as long as we evaluate everything in terms of rupees, and with the rupee going down against the dollar, it's going to become much more lucrative to do work for abroad, and our mindset is getting shifted there. So as Rishabh was pointing out, we probably need to also look at the non-monetary incentives, the emotional incentives that you get from contributing to all this. Please, questions.
Hello sir, my name is Sagar Shah. Right now I'm just a college student, first year college student. I have developed an operating system named Cosmic OS, which is based on Android. So it's open source. I have a community of 3,000 members in Google+. I also have a Telegram community of around 2,000 members. And I have achieved around 3 lakh downloads until now. But I'm not, as Rishabh Shah said, that I'm not I've not got much donations. Like around, I would have received only around $30 to $40 until now as a donations. Nothing else.
So you received $30,000 to $40,000.
$30 to $40.
$30 to $40. Okay.
So like.
I'm just saying.
The few zeros can make all the difference. But.
So do you have a website for your product?
Yeah,
do you have a, yeah, okay.
I have a website. I have all the code is available on GitHub, and like I even like people are making YouTube videos of my OS, reviewing my OS. They will be earning more than me actually.
See, this is awesome. What you have already achieved is, I mean, if you're saying what you have done, it's awesome. I think you deserve.
If you ever need a job, I suspect you may not need a job, but if you ever need a job, it's there for you. It's waiting for you.
So yeah.
But also, having said that, no, I think we need, not particularly for your product, but we need to explore other forms of funding which you were talking about. At one stage, we managed to convince UNDP, saying that free software, open source is this. You produce it once, it can be reused all over the place, and they went into supporting it big time. They were running this center in Malaysia, IOSN, International Open Source Network, which subsequently closed.
So I think first thing is that you right, awesome. What you're doing is just keep doing it. These things take time, they take much longer, and what I've learned is, make sure you have a good website, you have a donation way to donate, you already have a PayPal account where people can donate, right? So just keep doing, just keep getting better at what you do. You don't need funds right now, right? Because you're a college student, you're kind of supported by a family. So
Not entirely.
So don't see so there are two parts to it. If you want to keep this as an open source project, don't expect anything. Just keep going. Things happen, they happen. Like somebody said, wherever you apply for a job, you will walk in. You will walk in for a job in any company in the world. So you already built that reputation for yourself. I'm sure you have built Twitter followers. I mean, keep building a social media profile. You already have YouTube profile. So these are great assets. And how long have you been working on it?
Like from 3 years.
Awesome. 3 years. I mean, that's amazing. Just keep going. Plan for another 7. And you will be set.
No, Rishabh made two very important points. One is that don't have any expectations, because you end up bitter. You see, someone will take it, grab it and run with it, and all these things can happen if you're not careful with licensing and all that. But also, it takes a lot of time to mature. So that's the other thing. The projects which we are citing, see, unfortunately, it's not a very fair world. Now, Wikipedia, I don't know, many of you all would have noticed a call for donations. And that bar, it keeps growing so fast, like in no time they've made 2 million donations. So I've been a Wikipedia contributor since 2006 and all, and they are very generous with what they give us. So there are, they'll call you for trips, for seminars within the country, of course, and they'll fund that. So they are successful, they are big. The small guys, how you sustain, how you survive, I think that's the issue.
So I would like to, sorry, you want to go ahead?
No, I just wanted to mention there are ways of getting paid. So Flatter is a way. Okay, GitHub used to be one way, Patreon is a way, right? So, I mean, you've tried the donation method. So these are some established donations method. The point is, why would someone pay you for the ROM that you're building, right? Okay, who would pay you rather? A device manufacturer can pay you. A device manufacturer who's not making significant changes to the default ROM that they provide can pay you for that, if they don't have that sort of person on the team. But more importantly, if you know how to do these things, you can offer a greater value to the free software community for building a proper free software ROM for a variety of devices. If you have a specific need to earn money now, you can sell devices. preloaded with your ROM, right? So I mean, there are so many ways. When I was in college, like 18, 19 years back, I had learned how to set up Squid. So there would be places where I would help a cyber cafe set up Squid and a gateway, dial-up gateway to access, to provide internet access, and they would pay me for that. I'm just saying, you need not get paid for what you are good at. If you want to get paid, you can find other side effects of your knowledge and experience, which can also pay you, and which will cross-subsidize this work that you really want to do.
Thanks for asking that very provocative question.
So I would like to extend the same point. So essentially there are two things. So you are writing code, you are producing an operating system because that is what you wanted to do. But to make money, you need to sell to people what they want to buy. So kind of like figure out like, so building a business and writing code, like again, I think like that you need to treat them as two different activities. So you have gained valuable skill sets. So figure out a way to monetize that. So which means that you need to continuously sell what you are trying to sell. So can you sell certifications around your OS that this is the OS directly coming from the authors of the OS? Would you like to buy this? Like he said, the example of device manufacturers. Can you find a device manufacturer who can pay for that? Can you find other IoT commercial usages? Maybe not the mobile phone, but the OS can potentially go to other devices where people would like to pay to the OS maker for the privilege of using that. So potentially could you go and license to the IoT people? So you will need to figure out like what is the business around the tech skills that you have gained and whatever you have accomplished till now. So like the thinking around as a business person and thinking around as a technologist, you will need to differentiate between the two. And you will need to figure out like what are you in the business of selling versus the business of developing the open source code. Because obviously there is already open source code available for mobile phones, right? So why are they going to buy yours? So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll go one step ahead.
Sure.
I'll put my money where my mouth is. So we have an open source ERPNext open source foundation. I always wanted to do an open source fellowship. So I'll fund you for an open source fellowship for 1 year. Just get in touch with me after the event. So I'll fund you for a year. So because I also believe that you don't have to worry about these things today. How to sell your software. I mean, this is not important. You have to get it to as many users as you want. And there should be more organizations giving fellowships to people like you. So we'll make a start.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I throw one question to the audience? I want to know from you all, of course the answer is no, but is the press responsive to these kind of stories? Because I had this experience, if I would interview someone, my editors would tell me, we Indians, we are great at making these claims, but we never deliver the results. And while that was true for one section, it's also true that people are doing good work, never getting noticed. Has any of you all seen such kind of cases noticed, get maybe 1-2 paragraphs mentioned? And are your colleagues contributing sufficient to code nowadays? Any examples, experiences? One hand up.
Hi, so I think when you talk about press, do you mean mainstream media?
Anything, whatever.
Because I feel like we do have a lot of good press around tech, right? We have O'Reilly newsletters and we have so many of these magazines that we've also got today from here. Yeah. So there is a lot of press, tech-related press for sure. Now that tech-related press is not mainstream media that we all know. I feel like that's the major difference here. Like no one gets up and like each and every Tom and Dick and Harry would be talking about the mainstream press newses, right? Who got killed or who got married to whom. But no one's really going to be talking about a latest release or something.
Who got funded?
Yeah, I mean, and you will find those things in those tech magazines, but are they mainstream? That's the big question.
No, good point. But I want to tell you all one thing. You may not have a clue about this, but the way journalists operate is really crazy. They wait for someone to come and give them a press note. And then depending on their mood, they may or may not carry it. And if they carry it, they'll carry it verbatim. You can get away writing any rubbish there. And they will not take the trouble to notice you, which is something different from the way the Indian media operates as against, scouting around for stories.
So I think we need a few success stories because like if you look at the startups, in 2009 nobody was covering startups. It was like, okay, like you got $100,000, like who cares in the world? Like $100,000 doesn't make news in India. So, but today all of that stuff makes news, and that is all thanks to the success of the people who have built value to some extent. So, when there are successes, not just in money terms, but in terms of like either the success of the engagement, so the news will follow, and then people will look for discovery.
Figures. People understand figures.
Yes, people understand numbers.
This, numbers. This is an intangible product, no? And how do you explain to it? Like, secondly, I want to, don't mind me saying it, but Indian techies don't communicate.
That is also true.
We will communicate with a 2-line email. You've made something. I'm so glad that you all stood up, and you also, madam, made your point. You know that this is what we feel. This is what we've done. Okay, speaking communication is different. We love to talk, and if you put us in a hall of South Asians, 5 o'clock program will finish at 5:30. No, I won't do that. But when it comes to writing, that's where we should be more visible.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think we, I mean, if you look at ERPNext, we have a very excellent documentation. We do like a lot of blogs. It's not that. I mean, it's also that, like Tarun said, we don't have enough success stories. So, it's not something people look forward to. So I think it's just having enough critical mass of projects to kind of
it's a matter
push
of time.
it forward.
Once you find a few successes, so people will start writing about it.
We've said enough. Audience, please, 1, 2 hands up. First, second. We've got 6 minutes, so please, if you can be a little bit brief, I won't curtail you all. Name and question.
Check. Yeah, I'm Prashant. I think adding to what she said, the lady in front, I think the talks that do happen in like tech Twitter circles or like different places like that, right? And I think that's some sort of good enough recognition that's happening to these people. But also adding to that, I think the sphere that's coming up now is things like what he mentioned in terms of blog, right? So I think a lot of recognition comes through your work put out in Medium, like your Medium articles and things like that. And that's what like gets picked up. So if I'm looking for some sort of particular open source software and some small application, and say he's put up a Medium blog on that, so I get to see that, and that's when like news spreads about some sort of small niche application using an open source tool, and then slowly like traction in terms of followers. So I think alternatives in terms of Medium and those things are coming up, and I think in a few years probably people will get recognition in terms of what they do.
Yeah, we'll take all 3 questions together.
Hi, my name is Srividya. My question is, like, if you are selling open source software as a business and service, so like, what's the first point you put forward? Like, do you actually pass the torch of open source and like like help them to like build their own community and contribute to the bigger community, or like you first like approach towards like, oh, use our service and we'll give you the extra sauce which you don't get from the other open source community, like we'll have that added like secret ingredient like immediate support, or like how do you approach the first thing? Like, okay, you first use, okay, I think the beginning is like, oh, we use open source like technology is what like I think the first thing you'll start with, but like the first, what kind of approach you use, like them being an open source contributor or them being using your service?
Abbas has strong views on this, but we'll just take the last question and then we'll answer all.
Okay.
Last behind the grey.
My name is Monajit. This is an observation. I find that it's very difficult to get VC funding for open source. In the Silicon Valley in the US, the entire Hadoop and big data ecosystem started at open source, and then the products that were built on top of them were all hugely funded by the venture capitalists. In India, it is very difficult. It's always, that the money goes into the e-commerce and the internet startups. It's just an observation.
Okay, so 4 questions. VCs. What's the model, and your question about how important is visibility, fame.
So I'll take up the VC question first.
Please take whatever. This
so
is
I'll take the last observation. So so the number of VCs in India is like very, very small. Like I think if you look at the number of companies, number of SMEs, number of startups that come up every month runs into thousands. Every year probably runs into tens of thousands. So the mainstream news media is an echo chamber. So it looks like everyone and their grandmother is getting funded, but that's not really true. So it's I think like less than 1% of the companies reach like Series A, and then a handful of companies reach like Series B, Series C and beyond. So So I'll just finish
Please,
it
please,
immediately.
please.
So, and the question about like whether open source companies are specifically not getting funded, that's not true. The kind of companies that get funded are the companies who have a product market fit and who are pursuing a very large market. So whether you use open source or proprietary software doesn't really matter to the VCs. Like you need to have a business model which can make money for them, which can return them their entire fund. So that's their criteria. So it has absolutely got nothing to do with the fact that your product, whether it is open source or not.
Over to you all guys, last comments.
Yeah, so I'll just couple of my thoughts is like I agree. Mainstream media matters even lesser these days. I mean, I wouldn't be really proud of an article in the Economic Times, for example. So and we do get a lot of people who read our Medium posts, and I mean they connect in a much more authentic way than somebody massaging a press release. And I guess I'll let.
Okay, to answer your question. See, if we were approaching someone who wanted to implement a solution using free software, it wouldn't, the community and all those things don't really matter to them. Okay, it might matter in the sense if you're trying to tell them, look, using this tool is important because it has a big community. But that they are not really looking at that value. They want to get something done. They have realized either themselves or via discussions that this free software tool could be a good way of solving that problem. Right now they want to just solve the problem, right? And they're willing to pay someone to solve it for them. So then the negotiation is how much they want to pay you for it and so on. But one of the things that you mentioned, the community aspect becomes important in terms of exercising your freedom of choice. So let's say they did not want to continue to buy support from us. They wanted to go to someone else to buy support. And if that, then it's important that there are at least few other people who use that tool, okay? But again, I could have an opinion. I might like using this tool, and that's a matter of taste at times. It's not a matter of what's good or bad. I like this tool, so I provide services to customers for that problem using that tool. There might or might not be too many others, right? I'm not going to just use a tool because it's popular. I'm going to use a tool because I like it and it solves a problem. Right?
And last half minute about fame and non-fame. We are torn between these two things. Many of us are modest guys down here. We hate the idea of putting ourselves up front and writing and discussing and being seen in public. That's one extreme. The other extreme is like, going all out for it and, doing only things for name and fame. Somewhere in between there's a middle road. I think you have to decide where that middle road is for you. But if you're getting it, take it because it's part of your perks. It's a legit part. You're not doing it with that intention in mind. You might attract the right people to you, the right team to you, who knows. Thanks. With this, I'd really like to thank my panel, all of you all for being such a nice audience, got very deeply involved from the questions, we can see it. And we've almost been on time, so yeah, 2 minutes late. Thank you so much for organizing the session.